Hey guys, welcome to another session of Epic 7. Today we're going to focus on gearing, enhancing gear, stats, substats, and if you should be salty when you're rolling bad substats. Now, this is more of a theory craft, and I'm going to theory craft some gear and potential if we roll some bad substats. So what I'm going to do here right now, I'm streaming this, I'm doing this live, so I'm going to enhance this live so you guys get to see my rolls live, if it's salty or not, and I will do my best. I wouldn't consider it justification, but I would do my best to explain why some upgrades, even though it seems salty at first, is probably not. So actually, you know what, I wanted the plus 12 it. I don't know if I could do it with this. Let's try it out. Let's see what substats we roll here. Defense 10 and speed 7. Ooh, this is really good. This is actually really good because I was planning to use this on like on Cleary or DN or a speed healer or tank. So this is actually really good. Turns out the best. I have no rolls on attack, so hopefully the last roll is not on attack. I think that would be good. So let's roll on the other one here. Rare Ruby says same as mine so far. Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. I actually like that. This one though, it rolled 3 crit chance, but I got really low rolls on them. That's why it's at 11, which is kind of salty, but still getting crit chance is better than nothing, I guess. Arguably, I would probably want effectiveness and crit chance here, and maybe health and not percent attack, and I'll do my explanation on why in my theory craft here. So we can get that to plus 12, which is I'm gonna do, and we'll see what we get. Health. Okay, I'm actually okay with this. As long as it's not attack, I'm actually okay with this, and I'm gonna do my explanation on why. We're gonna do this right now. So I know that everyone who plays Epic 7 will have the experience of rolling complete salt or seemingly salt. Now, I'm going to go off right off the bat and say that there is no such thing as a salty roll as long as it's not on a flat defense or health or attack stat. I'm going to try to find one here that actually has one so I can use it as an example. Okay, so let's say for this one, let's say for this crit necklace here, you want to go for the percentage modifiers mainly, and unless you roll everything into a flat stat, it's actually never too salty. And the reason is because as you're playing Epic 7, you're going to begin to see units that are able to benefit from 2 or 3 stats, and different units for different reasons. So like none of the stats go to waste. So even if you have let's say like an effect resist, extremely high effect resistant gear on, let's say a DPS gear, I'm gonna try to find, I actually don't know if I have any as an example, so we can put that up there. Let's say, okay, so let's say for this one, okay. So a lot of people maybe when you're starting out, you might be rolling for the base stat. You got that 50% attack there, and you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay man, I really want really high crit chance, like pretty much no effectiveness. At the beginning of the game, most people would probably think that effectiveness and especially effect resistance is the worst stat, but that is definitely not the case at all. In this ring, I think most people would say that they want speed and maybe crit chance for an attacking ring, but this one rolled health and effectiveness, and as you can see, it was easily put onto my Assassin Cartuja. So that's just an example, because the effectiveness on Assassin Cartuja obviously will help him with the effectiveness roll of his debuffs, so his S3 and even his S1, the bleed proc. So like if let's say you got this ring and you wanted to put that on Luna, you want to put that on Lorena or something like that, and you're really hoping for that crit chance, that maybe that health and maybe speed, and you got all effectiveness, and you're just like, crap, I'm never going to use this ring. Just keep in mind that of course as long as you study the units and their skill sets, you're going to be given to see uses for everything. So one of the things is, like we talked about this on Discord, a lot of us have been hoarding gear, and I think there's a certain time where you just stop hoarding certain gear. So at where I am right now, unless it's an epic or 70 or 85 or higher grade, you hardly use it unless it had really decent rolls to begin with from like a long time ago. Otherwise, like let's say this necklace here, even though you would never really use this necklace, actually let's see, what would be a better option. Let's say this critical hit damage on this counter set. If you're at end game, you probably would never invest in this because the base stats, the main stat on this is too low. Now, like for example, just showing that my my necklace here. Let me try to find it for you guys. I think it's actually equipped to someone. Compared, actually no, it's not. So let me look for it. It was this one. Yeah, there you go. This 85. So this is a total of, if I remember correctly, a 60% critical hit damage main stat, because it started at a 12% main stat. So if you had a 85 level or higher at a heroic, you get the max. You get the maximum main stat at the plus 15. Now, arguably, like, you know, if you're a late game player, you would never really invest in the one that I just showed you before. Same set, counter set with crit damage. You would just never invest in it. But of course, if you're a newer player, you know, just go along and just gear up weaker gear to get you stronger, so you can take on harder content to get better gear. So it's part of the game. But late game, especially now with the GVG actually actually in the game now, it's very important to actually have effect resistance. So actually, I'm gonna go to my Crowell. He actually has a pretty good example. Or does this make the video longer about talking about the mossy water bottle? Oh man, inside story here. Okay, so I'm gonna use Crowell as an example. I just thought about this. So effect resistance on Crowell is at 31%. Arguably, that's actually not as much as, you know, some people may get. But let me take a look at the substats to find where my effect resistance is coming from. Not this. 5%. Okay, so 17%. So okay, so let's say this helmet that you get from the Labyrinth, I believe. This helmet, most people, if they're running this, would probably think about this for a tank. And you know, if you're a beginner player, you might not understand the importance of effect resistance as much. So you might hope for max health, max defense. Because when you're using someone like Crowell, like obviously going for high health is very beneficial, since his S3 once procced casts a barrier that is proportional to the caster's max health. So the more health you have, the stronger or more HP, so to speak, the barrier has. So most people usually focus on really high HP for Crowell, and also of course his S3 does his damage lost health, proportional to his lost health. So if you have 16,000 health, you're brought down to let's say 1,000 health left, you're doing 15,000 damage straight. Of course, no misses, no critical hit though, but it's still really good. So you know, people who have, let's say 20,000 HP Crowds, 25,000 HP Crowds, one, they're really hard to take down, and once you take them down to a certain threshold, he should be able to one-shot anything with his S3. And now, talking about the effect resistance, that's what's really important for someone like Crowell, because once you stun him, or disable him, let's say you silence him, you stun him, disable him somehow, or even CR pushback. Now with the Lytica released, combat readiness pushed back, then you wouldn't really get a turn, and he's still prone to dying. So Crowell has this kind of like double-edged sword usage about him. He could be really good, or he could be completely bad, because if you don't build him for speed, which like I said, is really hard to get really maximum health if you're gonna build him for speed. If you don't build him for speed, he's not gonna get a turn off, and that can end up really bad. So high effect resistance can prevent those measures, can prevent any of those things that lock him. Let's say even Falcon or Cleary, really good counter to Crowell, if Crowell doesn't have high effect resist or immunity buff, since she can cleanse and of course provoke. Once Crowell is provoked, all he's gonna do is hit back with his S1, possibly provoke his target, but then it's not gonna be good. You know, you might say that effect resistance is only good in PvP GVG scenarios. I would say most likely it's going to be ran there most of the time. But at this point of this recording of this video, I've been kind of refining my Wyvern 11 team for a more efficient auto run. Crowell is my main tank on the front lines, tanking Wyvern 11. Now, if you know Wyvern 11, you'll know that his attack, one, it dispels one of your buffs, and the second one is that it pushes you back in CR. So there are many times with just a 31% effect resistance, I've been able to resist that CR pushback, and therefore Crowell is not pushed all the way back, so he is able to use his S2 for the defense buff, or even the S3 for more damage and casting that barrier, so he lasts a bit longer for Wyvern. And again, that is really helpful in an auto run, especially if I'm not soul burning my damage dealers. So again, like I said, effect resistance definitely not a salty one to roll, especially now. Now, I do believe that in even a future meta, when people really understand how good effect resistance is, I'm pretty sure they're gonna start running gear like this. So let me pull up. I think Tamarine is the one that has it. Excuse my Tamarine, she's really bad. So she has an effect resistance set right now, but with a 50% health, I was running this on my Angelica for the longest time. Although I didn't complete the set because I threw this on temporarily as I'm leveling her for the 50% base health. It has a 19% defense right there, which is pretty good. It does have 4 speed, which is a benefit as well. But if you run, like, let's say equivalent gear for, let's bring out the set here. I think I have an effect resist set ring with HP. Yeah, like this one, not that great, so I haven't invested in it, but it has 9% here, so if you max enhance, this is 45%. But if you get someone at the secret shop, make sure you keep that in mind. Once you start collecting these effect resistance sets, you're talking about 2-piece set, 20% each. If you can complete a full 2-piece set, and let's say your tank or maybe your healer doesn't need to be fast, you got a 60% effect resistance. That's extremely high. Plus substats, that will give you a really good head start, especially if you're dealing with, let's say, arena. So you don't really need to use an immunity set for that first round, but rather have a high effect resistance set all throughout. It will annoy your opponents, trust me. I ran into high effect resistance units before, and it's just like, damn, why won't this defense break proc? And it's because they have high resistance, and you can read if they have high resistance if you keep trying to debuff them and you see that little text that says resistance while you're doing that debuff. Hey Angelo Lagusa, welcome to stream, dude. Ochi Member says effect resistance is completely useless for PvE. Unfortunately, I have 110% on my Angelica, and she always pushed back on Wyvern 11. Wow, she always gets pushed back with 110%. I don't know, man. I mean, you're still effect resistance. Remember, it's not. It doesn't mean you resist it completely, right? Because it goes with the percentage of the debuff proc first, and then it goes into the effectiveness versus the effect resistance roll, which means you will never be able to 100%. Well, actually, maybe you can 110%, and you still get pushed back. That's unfortunate. Queen in a raid. Having high resistance against her, it has saved me many times when when the speed RNG is just not rolling properly. It has saved me a lot. So like my DN right now has a 38% effect resistance. Let me see my Angelica. So I run Angelica and DN 24%. It's not high, but it had saved me in a couple runs. It's just like she was about to debuff me. And then boom, both of them resisted. I was just like, yes. So even having a 38% is not bad to have. I mean, that's like 1 out of 3. Martin says you need to resist Wyvern's poison, push, and debuff. Wyvern 11 doesn't poison. Oh yeah, Martin has a point though. He says you can't just resist everything. Yeah, that's true. You can't resist every single thing. You can resist one debuff per hit. So So yeah, let's say there's two effects going on with Wyvern. Sometimes it's the D-spell, and by the way, his D-spell can also be resisted. Wyvern 11, so keep that in mind. Wyvern 11, his D-spell can also be resisted, so that's actually very important to know. So sometimes, if your debuff is resisted, let's say you have defense buff on Crowell, his defense buff is resisted from the D-spell, but he gets CR pushback. It's still higher chance for you to survive. So again, effect resistance very good there. But yes, you can only resist one debuff at a time, just like you can only cleanse, or at least for most cases, you can only cleanse one debuff at a time. Destina is broken though in that case. You can resist the push, Martin. You can resist the push. That was my whole thing. My Crowell resisted the push many times. It has saved me a lot since he'd be at low HP, he resists the push and he gets his turn in before Wyvern can lap him, and then he does his S3, puts up a barrier again, and just stalls just enough, one hit, just enough for my DN to catch up and heal him. So it does work. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to talk about is, again, the substats and the main stats, how important they are. Now, as most of you guys know, at least experienced player would know this, so this is old news to you, but maybe there are some newer players that would still benefit from this information, that you want to focus, both the left side and right side gear have benefits. Okay, so I'm going to go to like someone like Says here. Where's my Says? Right here. Let's go use this as an example. Now, my Says has a defense of 587 and 8,000 health. That's extremely low, and the only reason is because that the armor and the headpiece I have for him is actually really bad. So generally speaking, if you get a higher, look, this is epic grade already, so that's fine. If you get a higher level helmet, you can get anywhere near like 1,000 health to over 1,000 health. That at the moment for my Says is almost a 300 health difference, which will get him obviously higher health, and that will give much higher survivability. You'll see that in my Crowell there, this helmet at a 71 has a 1,050 health. That flat stat is actually very important, more important than most people think, I think. Let me go to my Luna here very quick. Okay, so my Luna has the Abyss set here, 300 attack. This is as high as you can get, I believe. I'm not quite sure about Hell Raid. Epic weapon drop at level 88. I don't know if you get higher than 300, maybe 305. But maybe you guys on stream might know this more than me. I've never gotten a Hell Raid epic weapon drop yet. I haven't even began to do Hell Raids yet. But for 300 attack here versus let's say this Sid's 285 attack, that you would think that that 15 attack isn't actually that big of a difference. Now arguably I would say so, but let's say if you used if you again go back to my Says, and this is the best gear to complete his sets for him, has 180 attack, that's actually quite a big difference. Now most of these damage dealers have on average about 1,000 attack. Like Luna has, I think, 1,100 or something after Max Awakening base attack. And let's say you have a 10% attack substat. I have a 16% here, so it's not a perfect example, but you have a 10% attack substat. That's only 100 extra attack. So you don't always have to fret about the attack substat as much as, let's say, getting a really solid epic grade 85 or higher attacking weapon. Just that base attack itself like kind of makes up for a 10% attack substat. So I would definitely go for, like, try to max these ones out, because you get the most defense and most health out of it. And then obviously for your damage dealers, maybe focus on crit damage and stuff as the main stat on the right side. Rare Ruby says, I think it's 315, not sure though. Oh, I would have to ask Terror. I know Terror has a couple epic weapons drop from Hell Raid. Yeah, if it's 315, it makes even a bigger difference. Like some people really don't think that this is a big difference, but it is. So I try to really max my weapons if they're really good, not just for the substat roll, but mainly for that base stat there. Especially the health on the helmet. Oh man, it changes a lot. It changes a lot. I did also want to say in priority of substats, and keep in mind substats. I would definitely say that if you roll, actually, go back to that ring there. Go back to this ring. If you roll attack, let's say I get my attack to 10%, okay, not a 6%, up to 10%. I would say in priority, attack base percentage substats is probably the diminishing return. And then the reason is because, again, substat percentage is still based on your base stat there. Critical hit chance, critical hit damage, effectiveness, and effect resistance are actually the best substats you can roll. And the reason is because, obviously, one, they don't hinge on a base stat. They're just additional to the current stat you're at. They also make the biggest difference in terms of just being an effective hero. Not effectiveness, just an effective hero. If you're a healer or a tank, that effect resistance, as we talked about, having a high percentage, it comes a long way. If you're a damage dealer or someone that can cast debuffs, effectiveness comes a long way. Critical hit chance, of course, comes a long way. And then, of course, critical hit damage is most of the time higher priority than attack. Again, if you can get an attack boot with a on a main stat, you would really want your other gears to have as much critical hit chance and as much critical hit damage as possible. Because again, if you have, let's say this weapon here, a 26% attack, so let's round it up, say it's 30% attack on a 1000 attack base unit, then you would only be getting very minimal out of that, which won't make that much difference. But critical hit damage is calculated at the end of the formula, after your attack, after your elemental weaknesses, I believe also after artifact effects. I'm not quite sure, I would have to double check, but definitely worth more if you have critical hit damage. So beginner players will usually fret about using attack sets like this. This Sid here has an attack set, but if you look at this attack set, again, 35%, and Sid's base attack is very low. I think it's like 900 or something. 900 something for 35% attack increase. But rather, if I could get similar main stats and similar substats like critical hit chance that I need from these hats, that I need the critical hit damage from here, if I could get similar main stats on the attack set, but put them on a destruction set, which gives a 40% more critical hit damage, my Sid would be actually a lot stronger. Yeah, I might lose attack. It might be about, like, I think 2,000. I'm just estimating about 2,500 attack. But if I can skyrocket my critical hit damage to about 220%, I'm doing 2.2 times more damage than I can with attack. So actually focusing on very, very high attack, there's diminishing returns. Now there is a formula in this, of course. If you only have 1,000 attack and you have, like, let's say 300% crit damage, you're still gonna lose out to let's say a 2,000 attack hero with 250% crit damage. So you do have to kind of work out and weigh the math there. A benefit for Luna is that at least if you focus on very high critical hit damage, because she has an insane attack passive, you don't really need to worry about her base attack. Rare Ruby says some units like Araminta attack set is best in slot for them. Because of the burn, right? Yeah, actually that's true too. That's true too. There's of course always exceptions. You're right. Burn and bleed is damage over time, but based on the unit's base stat, or not base stat, rather total attack. So Sirin, I have her here somewhere. I had run her for my Wyvern 10 runs. I did obviously put the attack set on. Because I didn't have enough good gear on her, but I just slapped this together, and so yes, I totally forgot about that. Thank you for bringing that up, Rare Ruby. So anyways, that's my thoughts. This part 1. I know I talked about a lot of stuff, ranging a lot, and I think we can talk a lot deeper into like, you know, like specific unit builds. I kind of just like skimmed the surface, but I think I've been ranting on for way too long, so I'm gonna end this here. Hopefully this has been helpful for you guys, especially newer players, when you're gearing up and thinking about gearing up your units. Think about those things. One thing I do have to say is, unless you're going for like insane substats with base stat combo, usually you wouldn't want to break your sets up, because you get that bonus, right? But there are certain cases where breaking up your sets actually do benefit you. So I talked about this before. Even though this is not a complete break in the set, if this boot was a speed boot rather than a crit boot, I would have still ran this ring on DN, because again, this can roll for 55% total health main stat, and it has 10 speed. That's really what's going for this one. So yeah, so breaking up a set, like I would try not to complete a crit set unless I had the proper substats in them, but most likely for my DN build, she's gonna be broken. A 4-piece speed set and whatever has the best substats or main stats to complete that. And the Lifesteal set, of course, it's very beneficial that you do complete it, otherwise you really don't get no benefit from it. But if you, let's say you have a 60% critical hit damage, but it only comes from your like a Lifesteal set, and you have like a 4-piece destruction set that can go on this, definitely go for that. You know, don't worry about completing the Lifesteal set. Just go for that critical hit damage if you have nothing better. Ruby's laughing. He's like 62% critical hit chance DN. Yeah. They're laughing at me before. They were saying that I'm doing a different meta for DN, the crit meta. Wonder who does more damage, your DN or my Tammy, says Zero Ruby. One more thing I wanted to talk about, I think for the Theorycraft Luna, and I'll probably talk about it in this future video if I do achieve this goal. So it's kind of an end game dream goal for me that I'm not quite sure if I can even ever achieve it. But ideally the scenario would be that I would lose the Lifesteal set, put on Destruction set with similar substats and main stats, and that would give me like easily 300 critical hit damage. Now that is asking a lot, because there's a ton of RNG involved in every single gear roll, so it's near impossible. But you know, someone out there must have this kind of Luna floating around. Get me about a 3000 attack. You know, higher attack would be better too, and a critical hit chance that is better than this embarrassing 47%. But running Cigar Safe over Uberius's Tooth, because Cigar Safe does, let me go with the grade here. Cigar Safe at a max level, max enhancement, gives you a 50% health. Attack by increase attack by 25%, absorb 25% of the damage dealt as health. If you can get this to a max level, so you would have to get a couple imprints or a couple bottles of knowledge to break that limit there. 50% damage, 50% of your damage dealt as health, going back to health, is going to be insane on someone like Luna. And also, if your health is under 50%, your attack is increased by 25%, giving her more damage output, so siphoning off more HP, which is a really ideal build for me, for my Luna. I would say for PvP scenarios, I would do that as well. Uberius Tooth is probably better for PvP, in my opinion. You get that extra like 1k to 2k attack on top, so it's easier to one-shot. But for PvE, I think a destruction set, if you're not going with the speed build, destruction set with like Cigar Safe would be really awesome, because again, one of her passives is that under 50% health, she swaps her passives swaps her buffs to a defense and a reduction of critical hit chance, but you lose the attack and critical hit chance if you're under 50% HP. But if your Luna is like extremely stacked, Cigar Safe at a max level will be able to siphon pretty much all of your HP back. Based on my average damage, my Luna does about 10,000 damage. So 10,000 damage with Cigar Safe, even at its base level, it gets 25% of that health back. That's 2,500. You know, that's quite a lot. And if you soul burn S3, you get a critical hit on it, you pretty much get full health back all the time. So sustainability wise, I think it's going to be really awesome, and probably for that build, high damage output, but also more health than what I have right now. Hopefully 10,000 11,000 health. Defense, if you get to 800 would be awesome, but like I said, it would require like full gear, being like 85 epic level, and also getting like actual good RNG on your substats and your main stat selection. So there's probably no chance I can get it, but that's just a dream come true if I could. I'm gonna end off with just catching up on the stream chat, and I will end this video here. I'm gonna build Luna with speed set and scythe. Wyvern PvP, I have 3 scythes. Toph says I have no scythes or tooth, sad face. Yeah, wait for the powder shop to refresh. One day they're gonna come. I might use my powder of knowledge to limit break my Cigar Scythe, to be honest, because I do really want to play with this build. And I'm gonna end that there. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server, follow me on Twitter, and subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next video.